Good afternoon and welcome to today's broadcast with Cyxone CEO Tara Heitner. Cyxone is developing transformative therapies for autoimmune diseases, and the company is currently executing a rights issue of around 70 million. Tara will now tell you more about Cyxone's business and the upcoming phase 2b study, and afterwards I will come back to her to ask a couple of questions. Over to you, Tara.
Thank you for the introduction, Katja. A little disclaimer to start with. So Cyxone is an emerging biotech company, and we're focused on developing transformative therapies for disorders of the immune system with a focus on autoimmune diseases. Now, this is a disease area where your immune system, which is meant to protect one against infections and diseases like cancer. Instead, your immune system turns against you in an autoimmune disease and attacks your own healthy organs and tissues. In rheumatoid arthritis, which is an area of focus for Cyxone, the immune system attacks the tissues of the joint, the bone, and the cartilage, causing irreparable damage if not treated. And in multiple sclerosis, the immune system attacks the nervous system. So Cyxone wants to address these large markets where there's millions of patients suffering each year. These are markets where there are current therapies available. However, notably, many patients do not respond to current therapies or respond poorly. So there is a subset of patients that we wish to address with our lead assets, Rebexamod, which is a novel disease-modifying small molecule oral therapy which can actually address the fundamental biological cause of the disease. And T20K, which is a novel disease-modifying therapy which we're developing for multiple sclerosis. Now, we have also completed a trial in COVID-19 patients, and I'll touch upon that also late in this presentation. The pipeline that we just presented features a number of attributes that I want to emphasize. First of all, as I mentioned, these are all both large markets. So there's a large number of underserved patients because there are patients who don't respond to current therapies, or even if they do respond, they don't tolerate them or they stop responding with time. So we're developing drugs with a number of important features. Firstly, novel modes of action. There are no other drugs on the market with these modes of action, so they're completely differentiated. We focus in Cyxone on developing drugs with favorable safety and tolerability profiles because often treatments come with compromises. Patients suffer terrible and unacceptable side effects, and we think that's not acceptable for having a good quality of life. And finally, ease of administration. Many of the drugs on the market today are injectables or infusions, require hospitalization, and are quite complex to treat. We want to offer patients drugs with ease of administration, so these would be taken orally, ideally, or as a subcutaneous simple injection. Now, these are areas where we have a lot of interest from the market, meaning other large pharma companies, for licensing and partnerships. And this is part of our business model to eventually develop our programs to license to outside parties. And this is also supported by a strong patent strategy where we have secured IP protection for our assets, and we have a strategy to extend the IP protection beyond 2041 for T20K and beyond 2043 for Rebexamod. So we are a clinical stage company. As I mentioned, we're very excited. We're starting a new year, and we have initiated activities for our upcoming phase 2b trial in rheumatoid arthritis. And this is the key value driver right now for the company, and something we're very focused on. Secondarily, we're also focused on T20K, which is our lead asset for multiple sclerosis. We are in preclinical studies, and we're developing this to very soon start non-clinical studies to prepare for the clinical development. In order to ensure we can deliver on this pipeline, we have put together a strong team of executives with a track record and direct experience in developing autoimmune assets. Our new CMO, Cornell Patter, has come with a track record in developing drugs for rheumatoid arthritis in particular, but also many other indications. Carl Magnus has a background in autoimmune, with developing autoimmune assets from his years at Novo Nordisk, but has a background in immunology, which is important for our core competencies as a company. And our new CFO, Henrik Hang, who came on in 2020, has a strong background in the governance and compliance needed for publicly traded companies and guiding us into the future. And myself, I'm a Canadian with a background in international drug development from my time in the US, working for pharmaceutical companies as well as working for many pharma and biotech companies in Europe and other countries. And the focus, of course, in my background has been on making these outreach to partnerships and to other companies to secure good partnerships and licensing arrangements, and I'll bring that forward with Cyxone. As I mentioned, there are many patients underserved by current treatments. When a patient finally goes to the doctor complaining of rheumatoid arthritis pain, and it's usually they've been suffering for many years already with the disease to the point it's become unbearable. The first line of treatment and what's typically prescribed for these patients is a drug called methotrexate, which is widely prescribed. However, what's important to note is that only 40% of patients actually respond to methotrexate. So there's a large non-responder rate. So the other drugs, first-line therapies such as steroids and non-steroidal anti-inflammatories are often used. These also come with some side effects and have moderate efficacy. Even those patients who respond to methotrexate, 25% don't tolerate it because methotrexate has some very unacceptable tolerability issues, and so alternatives are needed. In the last decade, some innovative drugs have come onto the market for rheumatoid arthritis patients. Biologicals, you may have heard of TNF-alpha inhibitors, IL-6 inhibitors, JAK inhibitors, and these have made a big impact for the industry and for rheumatoid arthritis patients, indeed. However, it's also important to note, firstly, that only 30% of patients respond to any given biological. So there's also a large non-responder rate. Those who do respond can take the drug for a number of years, but eventually they do become resistant to the treatment. And JAK inhibitors have been recently slapped with some restrictions due to some severe side effects associated with increased rates of cancer and cardiovascular disease. So it is a complete complex disease treatment regime that many patients face with many treatment switches in order to keep the disease in remission. And over time, still often results in side effects. So Cyxone is dedicated to addressing this. And how are we addressing it? We are developing rebexamod, which has a unique mode of action. So this represents a completely new tool, working in a new way for rheumatologists to use to help their patients. There's no other drug on the market today that has this mode of action. Rebexamod works by suppressing the immune cell, which is central to the joint damage in rheumatoid arthritis. It suppresses the inflammatory macrophage, which incorrectly targets the joint tissue, and releases cytokines and chemokines, which are chemicals which amplify the immune attack on the joint. Rebexamod serves to suppress the development of the inflammatory macrophage and the expression of these cytokines and chemokines, thus preventing the progression of the disease and preventing the damage to the joint, which is the underlying cause and manifestation of rheumatoid arthritis. So we're progressing this now into a phase 2b trial, and this trial is founded on previous results, where in a phase 2A study and also phase 1, we have shown safety, tolerability, and efficacy already. In the phase 2A study, this was a very robust study run in 225 patients with moderate to severe RA, and it was run with a 12-week endpoint and a 16-week follow-up, as you can see here on the chart. Now, at 8 weeks, you can already see in the chart on the left that you see some benefit compared to placebo, and placebo is methotrexate-treated patients. So this is benefit on top of standard of care. At 12 weeks, you see even more benefit. But what's key to our phase 2B trial is that at 16 weeks, you see statistically significant improvements compared to placebo. And this is important. This is what we're building on going forward into our phase 2B trial. Importantly, 8 other secondary endpoints were also statistically significant, showed statistically significant improvements at 16 weeks. So we have a very strong basis for moving forward into our phase 2B trial. What we're going to do differently in our phase 2B trial to ensure that we get a strong readout is the following. As you can see right now in gray, we show what was done in the phase 2A. In the orange, the phase 2B, we will do a number of improvements. First, we will have the endpoint at 16 weeks to ensure that we see that statistically significant improvement. But to even improve the signal further, we will change the inclusion criteria from a very heterogeneous and very severe patient population that was included in the 2A. We'll now include in the phase 2B a more homogeneous patient population that are methotrexate non-responders and with a average CRP that's slightly higher than 10, and newly diagnosed patients rather than patients with well-established RA that are hard to treat. In the upcoming trial, we'll also include a treatment extension for those patients who actually respond well to obexelimab. They will be allowed to continue for longer than 16 weeks in order to get more treatment benefit, which will allow us to actually generate more efficacy and safety data as well. So clear steps have been taken preparing the phase 2B trial. We've also announced that we have engaged a global CRO, and the CRO we're working with has extensive experience in RA and a good network of sites. So we're really looking forward to this year, a very exciting year for the company as we move forward with our RA trial. We aim to enroll patients in as soon as possible in the spring, and this will allow us to have a readout somewhere around end of 2023, early 2024. During this period, we continue to work with our discussions, our active discussions with a number of interested parties to secure, if it makes sense and has the right terms, potential partnership. And this will also leave it open for an additional partnership after the phase 2B readout. So we're really trying to maximize the value and moving forward with the phase 2B study. I mentioned also earlier this is a large market, and just to put some numbers to this, the total market for RA is around 30 billion worldwide. And we can reach a large portion of this market with a drug like obexelimab. Now, if we're very conservative with our calculation, and knowing there's about 6 million patients with RA globally, where 2.5 million of those are methotrexate non-responders, we can estimate that there's about 500,000 patients with non-responders in Europe and US, which is our primary markets. So if we are conservative and estimate that we would get a 20% market penetration at peak, this represents a market of greater than $1 billion. So very conservatively, we still believe that we can actually get quite a substantial market for Rebexamod. Now, in order to move this forward, we do have currently a rights issue where we aim to raise about 67 million Swedish kronor. This is going on right now until September 21st. So if there is an interest in taking part in this, the instructions are on our website. And what we aim to do with the funds that we raise is move forward with the RA trial. That's the main use of funds. And this will enable us to move forward until the beginning of 2023 with our activities. Another area of focus for the company is to move forward with our T20K. This is in a drug developed for multiple sclerosis. Now, as you know, multiple sclerosis is a disease where the myelin is destroyed by immune cells and these cells release cytokines, which also amplify the immune attack. It results in multiple symptoms that manifest in many different ways in different patients. But it affects people in the prime of their life, millions of patients every year, and current treatments also produce tolerability problems, safety issues, and many patients do not respond well. So we are developing T20K, which acts on a key cytokine, which is known to be responsible for the progression of multiple sclerosis, IL-2. T20K suppresses T cells by reducing the expression of IL-2 on the surface of cells, reducing the expression of IL-2 cytokine, and thereby limits the progression, the expression of T cells, the proliferation of T cells, and the loss of immune tolerance. So this is a disease-preventing mode of action, and we've shown efficacy and proof of concept in animal models in the standard accepted EAE model, where we have in a preventive model shown that we can, with T20K, prevent the evolution of the disease. And in a therapeutic model, which is where you allow the animal to develop the disease up to 12 days, you can see that, that we can completely prevent further progression once the drug T20K is administered. Now, this is just a snapshot of a large amount of preclinical data which we have supporting that T20K has a disease-altering mode of action. We continue with our preclinical investigations, and we hope to make a decision on the administration route shortly, continue with our non-clinical studies, and we will engage in partnership discussions as well, as this is part of our business model, and we already have some interest from the market. T20K has a potential large market, as this is also a very prevalent disease with 1.5 million patients worldwide. Importantly, this is also a disease which is quite common in Nordic countries, unfortunately in Sweden, and we feel very passionately that we want to try to address this and develop a drug which can make an impact, a meaningful impact for patients. With a conservative estimate of penetrating the market at 10%, we could conceivably reach a market of 1 billion per year, assuming similar reimbursement as you would get for an interferon drug. So just as a quick update on the COVID-19, as you know, we completed a trial in COVID-19 based on the fact that Rebexamod inhibits the overactivated macrophage, which is one of the key immune cell types causing the severity of the disease and patients to end up in the ICU. Our hypothesis was that Rebexamod would suppress the cytokine storm in the lung, preventing patients from becoming more severe. The trial was completed in Q4. Top-line data has not shown a significant difference between treatment and placebo arm. The primary endpoint in this trial was proportion of patients alive and free from respiratory failure at day 28. after 14-day treatment. So there are a number of other very important endpoints in the trial, which currently are being analyzed. And once we have the final report results from the trial, this will determine the future direction of the project. But based on these results, we will decide on developing for the acute treatment or other virally induced lung disorders. Now, importantly, I just want to emphasize that the ribeximon's value is anchored in autoimmune disease therapy if we look at the estimations for the commercial opportunity. And so that is why our focus really is on ribeximen in RA. Another aspect I want to highlight is that the mode of action is different from COVID-19, which is an acute disorder where the drug is working on an infection, which causes an acute response and needs to be effective within a short period of time. The mode of action is very different from the chronic setting in autoimmune disease like RA, which is a lifelong disease, and the drug needs to work over a long period of time for decades. So the results from a COVID trial have no impact on our progress with the RA trial. Our long-term goal is to develop our assets in multiple indications and expand our pipeline. We'll do this by expanding indications for ribeximen in RA, for T20K, beyond multiple sclerosis in autoimmune and neurodegenerative disease. And when it makes sense, we will also expand our pipeline by strategic in-licensing. The ambition of multi-indication pipeline also is supported by the market, that we can actually generate more value for the company and for our shareholders. You can see a large step up in value from a single indication, a licensing deal, to a multi-indication licensing deal. So this is something which we will work on in the upcoming years. Now, finally, I just want to say that we have a number of near-term and long-term triggers and milestones to look forward to. Very shortly, we have, of course, the initiation of the RA trial, which we have started upon. And the next milestone will be some regulatory approvals, as well as patient enrollment. And we continue to work on partnerships, which would potentially be announced in the upcoming months. And we will also have the announcement for the T20K, which will be the administration route, and potentially non-clinical studies during 2022. We have continued to work on our preclinical studies, and we will have a number of exciting announcements about our preclinical work and our collaboration with Konstantino Pitsalis and our collaboration with Medical University of Vienna. We continue to work on our patent portfolio and our patent strategy, as we have filed new patents in 2020, 2021, and we continue to strengthen our portfolio in the future. So to conclude, I have mentioned that we are focused on autoimmune disease. Our lead indications are rheumatoid arthritis and multiple sclerosis. These are drugs with novel modes of action, completely differentiated from any other drugs on the market today. We will expand into additional indications in the future. We're working on diseases with potentially billion-dollar markets, but there's a strong interest from the market for partnerships and licensing deals. And we have a pipeline with milestones both in the near term and in the long term. And finally, we have put together a strong team, both on the C-level as well as the R&D team, with decades of experience in drug development in our indications, and with a history of business development success. So with that, I look forward to your questions, and I hope you can connect with us by our website or on LinkedIn.
For that very informative presentation, Tara.
You're welcome.
So I have a couple of questions for you, obviously. You mentioned that Rebexamod is one of your key value drivers. And I wanted to know, in what way is Rebexamod different from other drugs that are available on the market? Is it mainly that it has a different mode of action? And can you clarify what mode of action actually is?
So the mode of action is how the drug works on a biological molecular level. And yes, it is quite different from what is on the market today. So the new drugs that are on the market today are biologicals, like TNF-alpha inhibitors and IL-6 inhibitors. And these are antibodies. These are large molecule drugs which are administered as an injection, first of all. They work by sequestering or mopping up the cytokines that are released. So the body, as I mentioned, the macrophages and the immune cells release these cytokines into the blood, and the cytokines amplify the autoimmune attack. So what these drugs do is mop up the cytokines after they've been expressed. What Rebexamod does, which is different, is first of all, it's a small molecule, it can be taken as a capsule very easily for convenience for the patient. And it works by going inside the cell and inhibiting a pathway which produces the cytokines. So we basically turn off the tap, so we prevent the overproduction of cytokines before they're produced. And this is where we have the differentiation. So not only does it sequester IL-6 and TNF-alpha, but Rebexamod works on multiple cytokines. And by suppressing multiple cytokines, we believe we will be able to address a wider range of patients and be more effective in patients that don't respond to current treatments.
Thank you for clarifying that, Tara. So the phase B study that's upcoming, what exactly are you going to be looking at?
We're going to be looking at controlling the disease in moderate to severe patients. And what's important is that the phase 2A trial was, a very robust trial, as I mentioned, with a very high bar for success. So the endpoint was ACR 20. And this is an endpoint which is recognized by the FDA as a valid endpoint for registration and for pivotal studies. So the fact that we actually showed benefit and could see a statistically significant effect at 16 weeks with this high bar is what drives us forward. In the phase 2A study, there were quite severe patients. This trial included patients with well-established RA for over 5 years in some cases. In the upcoming study, we're going to be working with more newly diagnosed patients. So the likelihood of showing benefit in these patients is even greater. And we're going to continue forward with an endpoint that has that's well accepted by the regulatory authorities. We're working with ACR 20, ACR 50, ACR 70 as secondary endpoints, and potentially DAS 28 as our primary endpoint. So this is going to allow us to move forward with a positive readout into a phase 3 study afterwards.
And you mentioned in the phase 2A study you had around 200 patients. How many patients do you hope to include in the phase 2B?
We had 225 patients in the phase 2A, and we will have about the same number in the phase 2B.
And when do you hope to start enrolling these patients, Tara?
We're starting to look at sites now and getting regulatory approval. So it all depends on how fast the regulatory authorities come back with their approvals. That's the rate limiting factor. But our ambition is to start in the spring if possible.
Are you worried about the pandemic causing any delays to the study?
Well, we were worried about it last year, which is kind of why we had delayed the RA study and focused on COVID, and that was actually a really good decision for us as a company. But I think now the industry has gotten accustomed to working during the COVID pandemic. These are chronic patients that don't necessarily need to go to hospital to take their treatment and don't need to be in the hospital for the trial. So our CRO has now a lot of experience actually running trials during a pandemic, and so I think we're safe to move forward.
Good to hear. Can you tell me a bit more about your road to market with Rebexamode? In what phase do you hope to find a potential partner?
Well, we're currently discussing with a number of partners on a partnership now in many different geographies. And we are looking for a good strategic partner currently. But we also would like to secure an additional partner after the phase 2B readout. And this, we think, will give us the greatest value for us and for our shareholders as well. The partnership is important for market validation as well as funding, but also we can also get strategic advice from companies. The ones we are focused on are companies with a pipeline and experience in RA. So the companies we're discussing with already have distribution networks and commercial channels for the drug once it hits the market.
You've secured a patent for Rebexamode and also for your other candidate 220K. What does this mean for your company moving forward?
Thank you for the question. It's I just want to correct you. It's not. We haven't secured a patent. We filed a new patent. So we've been very active preclinically and generating a lot of new IP. And we were very happy to file a new patent on Rebexamode in 2021. We filed 4 new patents on Rebexamode in 2020. And these patents will, once approved, will give us patent protection out to 2043 and potentially beyond. The new patent is especially very interesting. It includes many composition of matter aspects, which is giving us a very strong protection worldwide.
And Tara, you're currently undertaking a rights issue, and if fully subscribed, it will add about 70 million to the company. Can you tell me a bit more about how you will be spending this money?
Yes, definitely. We were very eager to move forward with our RA trial, and in order to secure the partnership with the CRO, we really needed to make sure we could fund the activities. So this funding is going to be used. It's 90%, 91% guaranteed, and this funding will be used to move forward with the RA trial primarily and get us to the next stage.
Thank you very much, Tara, for joining me today, and I wish you good luck moving forward.
Thank you very much, Katja. It's been a pleasure.